Hey everyone, welcome to Data Umbrella's webinar. I'm going to do a brief introduction. Liz will do her presentation, and you can ask questions along the way and we'll have them answered periodically. And this is being recorded. About Data Umbrella, we organize data science and open source events for the community, and we are a nonprofit organization. This is our team that makes it all happen behind the scenes. We have a code of conduct, and we thank you for helping to make this a welcoming, friendly community that people want to keep returning to. There are various ways to support Data Umbrella aside from our code of conduct. Please share our events with other people. That would be greatly appreciated. We also have a bunch of projects on our GitHub website, timestamps, website, our blog. Check them out. We also, if you'd like to donate to our nonprofit, we're on every.org and we're on Benevity. So if your company uses Benevity, there's a 100% match that can help support us. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, we have a really extensive library of data science, Python, RStats, open source resources. One of our playlists is career advice. Another is data visualization, contributing to open source. We also have a monthly newsletter at dataumbrella.substack.com. Feel free to subscribe. These are our most highly trafficked social media platforms. We use Big Marker, and so it has live captioning. So at the top, there are two letters called CC for closed captioning. If you'd like a live transcript, you can click on that and get a live transcript. Meetup is the place to go for upcoming events. We also have an online suggestion box. I'll share the link in case you have any suggestions for future event topics or you would like to speak at a Data Umbrella event. Today's talk is Using Data for Good, How Evaluation Powers Mission-Driven Work. Liz DiLuzio is a dynamic entrepreneur, educator, and leader dedicated to transforming how professionals approach data analytics. You can find Liz on LinkedIn, and I will let her, she'll talk about her background as she does her presentation. And with that, we will get started.
All right. Thank you, Reshma, for the introduction. And hello, everybody. I thought perhaps I can start just by introducing myself a little bit, and then we'll move into some of the content. So for first, me, I wear many hats. I am not only a founder, I am a strategist, a data analyst, and an educator. So let's look at each of those things. First, my company, a consulting company, it's called Evaluation and Learning Consulting. I'll tell you more about the company itself on the next slide. But founder, nonetheless. We also have recently launched a learning community. So we are an ed tech startup as well. I am, however, how I identify in terms of the work that I do. I'm an evaluation strategist, and this is the topic of the conversation today. What is evaluation, and how is it something that you really should know about because you can contribute to the field? I am a data analyst, not by training, but by a lot of lived experience, a lot of work in Excel, Python, R. I not only work with those tools, SPSS, Tableau, I work with these tools to provide services to my clients, but I also teach these topics. So wear, again, many hats when it comes to the technologies that we use as data analysts, not only to know how to use them, but also to use them to provide services. And a fun fact for you is that I once built a dashboard to facilitate a March Madness competition. And in fact, my team, I should say, my team is also developing another dashboard now for the F1 races in Monaco coming up next month. So if you have any sort of competitive spirit, it is not gambling, but there are prizes to the top winners. If you have any sort of excitement around competition, you like F1 races, feel free to hit me up. I'll share my contact information at the end, and I can include you on the distribution list when we send out our form for that. So that's a little bit about me. And again, lots of different hats. This is how I stay out of trouble. So then in terms of the company, Evaluation and Learning Consulting, this is some important background information for you so that you know where I'm coming from when I share the information that I share with you. So we are a firm that offers both evaluation and learning services. We provide consulting, we provide data analytics, we provide research, and we provide training. So those are the kind of buckets that we fill. We were founded in 2016, so we are coming up on our 10-year anniversary, not quite there yet. We are a blend of people who identify as evaluators and analysts. We also have trainers who might wear an analyst hat, might wear an evaluator hat, or all of the above. I consider myself to be in all of those buckets. But we do have people who just consider themselves to be analysts. They may train, they may not train, but they do not identify as an evaluator. And so part of my talk today is to explain how that could be you. How could you be one of these people who really serves as an analyst, leveraging the skills that you already have, but able to talk the talk and understand the job of an evaluator so that you can provide helpful support? Our company serves clients across the country. So our home base is in New York City, and our probably biggest and longest client base is also in New York City for that reason. But we have served clients in Vegas and in Boston and in San Francisco. So we really stretch across the country. We leverage data as a tool for equity, improvement, and strategy. That's really at the heart of evaluation, which we'll get into a little bit more in a moment. And some of the clients that we've worked up with include Meetup, L'Oreal, Stanford University, the City of New York, really a wide range of both public and private, as well as nonprofit organizations. So that's me, and that's the company. And now I want to begin just by sharing a little bit about evaluation. What is evaluation? So evaluation, I like to call, for people who are not familiar with it, applied research, but it's more than that. Evaluation is the systemic process of collecting and analyzing information so that we can understand a program, how it works, how it doesn't work. Same thing with a policy. How is it being implemented? How is it being effective in its goals? And how is it missing the mark? And then similarly, initiatives. So sometimes it's organization-wide that we're working with. Sometimes it's a very specific initiative or program. It can really run the gamut. Our work helps to answer questions that our partners have, such as, is what we're doing having the effect that we hoped? Or how well is it working? Or who is it helping? How well is it working and for whom? Evaluation supports learning and improvement within an organization, and it supports accountability as well by focusing on results, experiences, and context. So at its core, evaluation is about using evidence to make better decisions. And as an analyst, I imagine you are hearing data-driven decision-making in what I'm describing. And it really is, in so many ways, what we support as evaluators. We support data-driven decision-making. It is typically specifically about a program or initiative. And so we're laser focused on that in particular. And it can go broader than that too, but data-driven decision-making really is at the heart of what we do. So this is all words, and this is, very conceptually maybe satisfying, but maybe raises more questions than it answers. It's quite abstract. So I thought I'd share with you a few case studies of work that we've done recently or are currently engaged in to give you an idea of the wide range of work we do and why somebody might bring us in to work with them. So our very first case study is with Wyckoff Heights Medical Center. So Wyckoff Heights Medical Center is located in Brooklyn, and they reached out to us about a year and a half ago to help them as they prepared to open a satellite office. And the point of the satellite office was to extend their HIV STD services that they provide to the Brooklyn community. They were being funded by the CDC, and one of the common elements of evaluation is that we get called in as a necessary component for receiving funding from the federal or state government. So they say a portion of the funding that is received needs to go to evaluators, and we really serve as that accountability arm, and help the funders to rest easy at night, knowing that there's somebody who is working alongside their grantees to provide this level of reflection and service and help with building their programs. So Wyckoff came to us and they were looking for support in conducting a community needs assessment. And this community needs assessment was intended to help them to identify what services they would ultimately offer. It helped them they were curious about how to reach the people that they were seeking to reach, and really, who are we looking to reach? They were looking for gaps in services in the area to understand what they should be providing. And they were also curious who their local partners were. So who in the area is doing similar work or complementary work that they could collaborate with. And so all those questions and more, we sought to help them answer in our engagement. So we worked with them for a year, and we designed and conducted surveys and interviews and focus groups. We did observations. We did asset mapping. It was a really intensive, multifaceted approach to our engagement with them. And what that means for our analysts at the time was that they provided geographical analysis and support, so some GIS work. And they helped us to really run descriptive statistics. We didn't get too deep into the statistical realm, but we did seek to run descriptive statistics on all the data that we collected so that we could provide general trends and disaggregations in what we found. And then we used all that to share back their results. Case study number 2 is a client with which I'm currently still engaged. We are currently still engaged, and that is Stanford University. So Stanford has a business incubation program called Stanford Seed, and it supports entrepreneurs from across Africa and Asia. So this is a global initiative. They seek to support businesses that are small to medium size and are slightly established, not new businesses, but also not well developed. And they have a wealth of programming that they offer. It begins with a year-long intensive training for their leadership and that lead entrepreneur. And it extends into longer term engagement. So ongoing technical assistance, ongoing consulting, and just service provision. They also benefit greatly from a network. So you become the network of Stanford Seed alumnus, and they provide just opportunity for more business and for general support. So in this instance, and the reason I bring this group up is because the analysis part of the project is quite different from Wyckoff Heights. With Wyckoff Heights, it was very descriptive statistics. With Stanford, they've got that covered. They've got a small but mighty team that is collecting so much information about how the program's doing, what they're doing, what initial outcomes are looking like. And really what they were looking for is more advanced statistical support. So they want to understand more inferential statistics and findings. They're looking for support with t-tests and regressions and chi-squares. They want to understand trends in the data that they are collecting and get to that more advanced understanding level. So a good example is I'm meeting with the client actually after this webinar, and they're interested in understanding their application process. They have a pretty intensive one. It involves many people, and they want to know how well it's doing, helping them to assess how successful a company will be at the end of the program. So we're comparing the application scores with their metrics for success that they're using at the end of the program, a year after the program. And we're running all sorts of regressions and t-tests and correlations to just see if we can get at what that solid application process should look like at its most optimized form. So fun, really fun, and again, more advanced stats happening here. And both are pretty representative of where we can go in evaluation. And then I'd be remiss not to share this third example with you too, because it's yet again an example of a more diverse approach that we take. I think it's quite distinct from the first two that I shared. So there's an organization called the Afterschool Alliance. It is a nonprofit, really like a think research tank. They operate out of Washington, D.C., and they brought us in because they were interested in exploring a relatively new area of after-school programming, which is that it combines after-school programming with STEM as well as with community service. So all the after schools that they were looking to research had to have those three components. Oh, and it had to be middle school or high school students that were participating, couldn't be elementary. So they had this very specific focus because they saw it as an emerging market and were curious what the structures looked like. How were these programs designed? Why were they designed that way? What type of funding were they receiving? How were they thinking about their outcomes and their impact? What kind of metrics were they using? So it's really a meta look at lots of different programs and what trends can we see across those programs. And their goal was, one, to learn internally, but two, to share that out with after school programs who were perhaps considering this type of model and rolling it out. Or to just help to consider funding and like how can they better fund programs such as this. So when they brought us in, they were just interested in the research support. Their staff was not large enough and they needed support to do this research. And this is much more traditional research that we did. So we administered a survey and we conducted interviews and we analyzed all of that data and we wrote a final report. So that's pretty similar to my case study number one. What makes this unique, because it was just really descriptive statistics that we ran. But what made this one unique is that they were interested in an add-on project, which was to create something that was longer standing. So they wanted the research to be able to continue after my engagement with them and after the report was finished. And so what we did was open up that Google form that we initially did the survey with, and we opened it up to the world. It's posted on their website. You can go find it and fill it out if you happen to be a part of a program that's such as this. And we connected it through live feed to Google's Looker Studio. So this is a live dashboarding platform where we vised up the main findings of the research. And so now when people complete this form, moving forward, we can see live feedback on the dashboard. And so this dashboard can be used by researchers and educators, by advocates, to look at the most up-to-date data on this emerging field as people continue to submit more information. So again, you might imagine in all of these different projects that I shared, and these are just three, I could keep going. There's lots of different roles and very distinct roles for an analyst. And so sometimes our evaluators can cover the analyst position. But as organizations grow and as more projects are taken on, I often see organizations, and ours is included, as we scale up, that people will wear two different hats. We'll have the person who interacts with the partner, who facilitates the meetings, who really scopes out high level. I guess I could move on to my next slide because this is the description. Who plan the questions, they frame the logic model, they do that interacting with the partner and really drive the project. And then they work with analysts. It's a distinct role, who do things like designing databases, if that's what's needed by the client, or just designing surveys and surveys, whatever the data collection tool is. They run the descriptive and inferential statistics. They build out dashboards as needed. They build maps as needed, and they generally help to visualize those insights. So those are those two distinct roles. And again, I see them emerging very often. And so for what it's worth, I posit that as somebody who enjoys data analysis, if something that you're seeking is one, to just reach into new markets, or two, perhaps you're looking for a job shift, or you're looking to just dive into what I would say the unique aspect of being an analyst with evaluators is it's really mission driven work. So it's that feel good work that you get to do. So if you're looking for the analysis with meaning, this is a really great field to have your eye on. So if this sounds appealing, knowing the core concepts of evaluation will make you way more marketable. So that's number one. You should really know about evaluation, what it is. And you don't need to know it to the degree of being an evaluator, but to the degree that you can understand what the evaluators are talking about and what they're thinking about and how you can lend support to them as they engage in the process. So I have worked with many analysts over time, and there are thought partners, analysts, who approach this really as a team effort, but their expertise is in the analysis. And then there are just the doobies, those folks who just tell me what to do, and then I'll go do it. And in my experience, it's the first category that are much more rewarding, and I think are much more marketable. Those are the analysts that we're looking for. I covered that second bullet point, that you don't need to know all the evaluator skills. They really are two different areas of specialty, but to the degree that we're a Venn diagram and we can meet in the middle, I think is where that value is. I've mentioned a lot of the different tools that we use in evaluation projects, but some examples include data analysis tools. So we often use Excel, especially those descriptive statistics. You don't need to go beyond that. But for more advanced work, R, Python, SPSS are really common tools that people look for. Salesforce is a really common database platform across the industries, but there are other database platforms that I see come up a lot too. I name these things, backing up for a moment, in terms of your resume builder. So if this was something of interest to you, these are the skills sets and the tools that you'll often see in job descriptions or in requests for a contractor. These platforms are the most common. So those are the analysis tools. Then there's surveying platforms, and I would say Qualtrics is it is the biggest and best platform, also the most expensive. So oftentimes you'll see things like Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, Microsoft Forms as well. When it comes to data visualization and or dashboarding, Tableau is the Cadillac here. But Looker Studio is a great tool to know. Power BI is a great tool to know. They're all similar. It just depends on what platform the client is working in. In essence, the more you know, the better. And likely as an analyst, you are very familiar with a lot of these things already. And then AI, I'd be remiss not to mention that evaluation, the field in general, or us evaluators are talking about AI a lot. Like, how can we use it? How can it best be leveraged? And where should we not be using it? And so I would say we're just in this experimental phase. We're open, we're curious. Some people are more leaning in more than others, but it's certainly something that we can't deny is a great support as we move forward. One thing I'm forgetting, and my GIS experts would be very disappointed in me right now, but another data analysis tool that I would say we don't use as often, but my goodness, it comes in handy if you have the skill, which is GIS. So ArcGIS or QGIS can be extremely helpful as well. Same thing with SQL. It's very niche. It's not very often that we need it, but it can be supremely helpful. And you will be the standout person if you have that skill, because it's harder to come by. All right, I'm going to pause here just to see. I've covered a lot of ground, and I'm curious if there are any questions in the chat box, or if you have questions, to pop them in there before I continue.
No questions so far in the chat.
Okay, beautiful. And I'm just going to stall a little bit to see if anybody is popping anything into the chat box as I go, and it seems like not. So I'm just going to keep my eye on the chat box as I continue to see if anybody else responds. Okay, moving on then. Some common terms in the field of evaluation. First one is mixed methods. You'll hear this frequently. This is a common approach. In fact, the American Evaluation Association says that a good evaluation is mixed methods. And this really means just qualitative and quantitative. So I should mention that as an analyst, another way that you could really expand your skill set and therefore marketability, if you're interested, could be to explore how to do qualitative analysis. A lot of times, what that looks like at its most basic level is just taking open text fields, say in a survey, and looking for themes. So some light theming, and then visiting that. So creating a bar chart, for instance, to show the top 5 themes that emerged from that open-ended response, or engaged in a project that is literally what we're doing right now with the open text fields. It could be more intensive than that. So it could be that you use, Deduce or some other theming platform and actually go into the theming process. So it's much more complex than that if you were interested in diving into that realm of analysis. Outputs and outcomes, you won't go 50 feet into the field of evaluation without running into one or both of those terms, because that's our bread and butter. So when we are collecting, I'll stick with quantitative data, because we do lean towards quantitative in general, I would find. When we are talking about a program, an initiative, a policy, the idea of outputs has to do with the what's being done. So how many programs, how many people attended, how often were they delivered, how long was it, et cetera. So those are our outputs. Those are the direct results, the ways of quantifying the direct results of our actions or the program's activities. And then outcomes are pretty self-explanatory. It's what we hope to achieve based on the work that we're doing. So what are we looking to achieve? And again, this is quantifiable. So both of those things we typically assess in any engagement. We need to know, one, what was done, and we describe what was done by the use of outputs. And then we want to know what the preliminary outcomes were based on those outputs. And so both of those things wind up getting captured and then analyzed and presented back to our partners. A common tool, a common way of doing this is surveying. You may be familiar with the term pre-post or retrospective post tests. And this is a way of trying to track change over time. So you might just administer a survey. In the case studies that I described, that's what we did. But you might see this multi-instance delivery of the survey to the same people. And again, that's just trying to track change over time. That's when we get to our inferential statistics. That's when we can start running some t-tests to see what the difference is between pre and post. Next, significance and trending significance. So, p-values 0.05, we ascribe to that too. So when we're running more advanced analyses, what is a significant level of change or difference? We also, and I don't know if it's just evaluators or if it goes beyond us, but we also have what we call trending significance, and that goes up to the 0.1 level. So we observe that this can be helpful, especially at the beginning when people aren't seeing profound impacts because we're still working to refine their program. The trending results help us to decipher where there's promising practices taking place so that we could build and grow on those. And disaggregation, that's another really important one. So for the field, we are extremely committed to equitable service provision, and therefore disaggregation becomes really valuable. And again, I don't know if that's a term that's evaluator specific or if it goes broader. You guys would be able to tell me. You all would be able to tell me. But disaggregation is when we look at an outcome. So let's say 95% of people were satisfied with the service because we learned this through a survey. But when we disaggregate, let's say by gender, we notice that there are profound differences in how different genders respond to the program and feel about the program. So this ability, I spoke to it earlier about not only what's working, but for whom is it working? That's a really important question that we ask. And so this, again, idea of disaggregation is important. And I name all of these things because these are the lenses with which the evaluator looks at the data, but we also rely on analysts to look at the data. These are some of those concepts that we look for as we dig into results that we have. Next, why is the field growing? So it is a profound field. It's been around since at least the 70s. And it's continued on even to this day, even in our political climate where we've got our federal government cutting back on a lot of federal funding. The field of evaluation persists and will continue to persist. And the reason is multifold. So for organizations, the reason they bring us into their work is because they're looking to improve and because they're looking to prove that what they're doing is effective. And evaluators we have that specific skill set to be able to support that work. And a lot of times organizations don't have the internal capacity to do that for themselves. For funders, and that could be philanthropies, it could be states, local municipalities, or federal government, but they all seek that accountability piece. And so to know that there's an external or internal evaluator or analyst who can help support evaluation work gives them some peace in knowing that the money is being used at its highest capacity. Data literacy in general is increasing. I'm sure you have seen that in your own experience, that people's understanding and use of data, even just the amount of data, is profoundly increasing. And so as that increases, as people become increasingly aware that data is something that they need to grapple with, a lot of times people who did not train in that field or just don't like it will seek out analysts, evaluators to do the work for them. And then finally, again, social justice is a thing. It is an important value for many Americans, many people around the world. And to have a field that is able to help people discern not just whether a program is working, but for whom it is and for whom it's not, to help improve the work that's being done is a valuable skill set that is sought out. So for you, some job prospects. I have here some titles, some common titles to look for. So if you're like, this sounds just right, I've been looking to make my next move, this is what I want to explore, where do I begin? This slide's for you. Some common job titles that you'll see in job descriptions include data analyst, which is probably not anything outside of the ordinary for you. A program analyst is more specific to evaluation. And so just as I said that we help to reflect on, tell the story of and improve programs, program analyst, that's where that originates from. Data consultant might be another job title. Again, that's more about short-term versus being a full-time employee. A research analyst might be another title that you see. You can find all sorts of roles. So there are for sure permanent roles. So any sort of consultancy like evaluation and learning consulting, we're small shop and small fish when you consider organizations like Mathematica or NORC or Urban Institute. They're research firms that are truly just national and hundreds of employees, and they have a large swath of those individuals who are just analysts, and this is their specialty. So that those are more permanent positions. And again, I tend to see those in consulting firms, so evaluation or research consulting firms. But you will also find those roles within larger nonprofits. So for instance, my very first job was with a children, youth, and families. My first job as an evaluator was in an organization that was a nonprofit for children, youth, and families in New York City. And we were a very large nonprofit. They are a very large nonprofit. They serve anywhere between 30 and 50,000 New Yorkers per year. They have over 100 programs that they're operating at any given time. And so you might imagine their budget's quite large. And as a result, they sought to stop using consultants to do the evaluation work and analysts to do their data and analytic work, and to bring a team internal because it's cheaper. So they have currently a team of about 15 to 20 analysts and then managers that they use to do this work. And the goal there, if you're looking to be inside of an organization like a nonprofit or a foundation, the goal there would be to be familiar with the services that they provide. Maybe you have some experience personally receiving those services. Maybe you have worked in that service area before, and your data analytics skills, both of those things. Again, it's this point that I'm trying to make of being able to compute is not the golden ticket. You need to understand the language as well in order to be marketable in this field. It's probably like most fields, right? If you work in marketing, for instance, to be able to run analytics is one thing, but you need to be able to walk the walk of marketing in order to really understand what you're doing as you analyze. So permanent positions are definitely available. Project-based, so 3 years of funding from the CDC, we need an analyst to help us with that work for those 3 years. Or freelance. So for instance, evaluation and learning consulting, we have 2 full-time positions. Everybody else is contract. And so as we expand, we bring in more people. And as that project ends, then we shrink back down. So it is completely freelance. You might just do hourly work, or you might, again, do project-based work. And then where to find work. The AEA stands for the American Evaluation Association. They are a really solid resource. They have a job board that is free. You do not need to be a member. And if I were to recommend subscribing to one place, and one place only, it would be that AEA job board. You will see opportunities arise. Often what you will see there is not necessarily data analyst positions, but you'll see what we call RFPs. They're requests for proposals. And you'll see on there just what that evaluation looks like, its broadest scope. That's typically what evaluators will look for, and they plan out what that full project looks like, but they often are looking for a team. And so if you are able to connect with people who are proposing, find evaluators such as myself and say, hey, I'd like to provide analytic support for this project. Here's why I think I'm qualified. Here's my resume. Let's work on this together. That can be a really great way to approach people and to network with them in order to get more work. Another place is LinkedIn. It's just a golden resource. Again, you can, now that you have the new word evaluation, evaluators, you can look and find us and see what people are doing, see what they're looking for. And people will often post when they're looking to hire. Some qualities of a good analyst, what we're looking for. A great evaluation needs analysts who can explore and clean data, who can translate insights visually. A lot of times our audience, maybe the first, like our most proximal partners are data savvy, but as we extend out, often we need to create something that's publicly facing, and being able to translate what you have discovered through your analysis to the general public is a skill. And that's definitely one that you and your evaluator can work together to make sure you enhance. Next, analysts who can identify gaps in understanding or knowledge and to teach to or around them. This is such a valuable one. It's recognizing that you are the expert in data analytics. And even if an evaluator is quite skilled, you know more than they do. And so in conversation, it's recognizing where they may have gaps and being able to talk around them. So being able to help somebody understand, even though they don't understand a concept, but being able to understand the analysis that you did, or being able to just teach, hey, here's how this works. Here's why this works. And this kind of skill building for the people that you work around is such a beautiful soft skill for you to acquire. This is not just exclusive to the field of evaluation. This is in general. And then finally, analysts who understand context and constraints. So in every single evaluation project I have ever worked on, I sure would have loved to have done inferential statistics, run regressions, and tell them some of the most amazing findings about their work and their data. And there are real funding constraints, time constraints. It's just how life goes and how projects go. So an analyst who can understand and help to navigate that, again, as a partner and not necessarily as somebody who is just being told what to do and then goes and does it, can be really helpful. A good example of this is when we're building databases for partners and recognizing, here's how many hours we have, here's how much time we have, like how many hours we have allotted to this work, here's how much time we have to get it done, and here's what the client's asking for, which is always the Cadillac. And based on real limitations like budget and time, what's actually realistic? What's the highest leverage thing that we can build? And what do we bring back to the client as such? You as the analyst are the one who knows that better than anybody else. And so to really understand what is needed in that larger picture makes you that much more helpful to the team. Last slide is to share with you how to make yourself marketable. So learning basics about the field, that's, as I've said many times, definitely a first place to start. And it helps you to offer guidance and suggestions to your team as you're engaging. In knowing how to ask good questions and not just answer them. So a lot of times analysts feel that pressure of just being the person who knows everything. But a lot of times when an evaluator, for instance, may come to you and say, okay, this is what we need. And this is what it's going to look like. And you being able to not just go and do, but to ask the questions and to understand what is underlying the desire can sometimes help to uncover a better way of doing things, a more efficient way of doing things, or just like a different approach. Being able to explain findings to non-data people, we spoke about that one already. And then finally, a bonus to show how your analysis can drive program decisions. So again, it's making that connection. It's not just understanding your analysis and what it means, but its implications in the bigger picture. Because again, I'm just sharing ways that you create more value as an individual on a team. And that's ultimately what you would be as an analyst working in the field of evaluation. All right, to wrap up, in terms of what's next, I do have coming up a session. It's a 90-minute workshop. It's a short, concentrated one. Seats are limited in it. You can walk away with practical, real-world experience. We will be talking about a real-world scenario and walking through what are these really classic elements of an evaluation. How do we come up with those outputs and outcomes? And how do we make decisions? We're simulating for you your analyst role in the evaluation experience. And through it, we're building not only skills, but knowledge and vocabulary. So if this sounds of interest to you, if what I've talked about today feels like it's got some traction for you professionally, and you want to take that next step, I think this workshop can be a really nice low-level commitment. It is going to be on Monday, May 5th from 2 to 3:30. I'm going to, as you can see, copy that link and share it with you in the chat box. The entry price is $25. It's really intended to just be a next step. Is this still of interest to me as I engage further? For those of you who are watching this video, I'm aware this video will be online in perpetuity. So if you're watching this after May 5th, it will be recorded. And so you can still use this hyperlink to watch the recording. It will also be offered live again periodically. So May 5th is just one of the iterations. Keep your eye out for it to be released again, or use that link, purchase the access, and then you can watch the recording as well and have access to all the materials and the takeaways. That's that. And then finally, I have my contact information. I'll copy and paste this into the chat box as well. There's a lot in here, depending on what you're interested in. I think maybe the most helpful is my email address, or this is the general one. Here's our website. Another really helpful one, I think, is just our newsletter. So in here, we share all sorts of industry highlights and things that are coming up, trainings that we're doing, engagements that we're engaged in. So that might be a nice thing for you to sign up for as well. Again, I'll share that in the chat box. And then that's it. Really, I'm curious from you what questions you all have, if any.
So while we wait for some questions in the chat, I had some questions for you, Liz. The first is, do you ever get into a situation where, you're called in to do evaluation, but it's after the data has already been collected?
For sure, yes. That has happened. It's not the ideal because now we're working with data that I'm thinking of one client in particular who's the extreme of this situation where we don't have control over how the questions were asked, and perhaps it wasn't very soundly, or we're asked to do a second iteration of using that tool and to compare data with the past, but conclusions that were drawn were not really sound methodologically. So yes, we do encounter that. Our best situation is when we're able to do everything ourselves, but we recognize that that's not always the case. We also recognize that people are just growing in their practice and we learn more. Everybody's constantly learning more. And so our goal is always to engage in a way that's educational. So here's what we believe, here's what we think methodologically, here's what's sound, and here's how we can help you to get there. And you can hear the remnants of that in what I just shared in the presentation, because the analysts are essential in that. And it's a very similar process of, okay, where are we at now? And how do we get to where the ideal is and what are those incremental steps to get there. And this is where that education is so valuable, that ability to explain to somebody who's not a peer, and to be able to just kind of cross that divide is so valuable.
And the next question I had was, are there some specific metrics that come up over and over? So I'll give you an example. In oncology analysis, a common metric is reduction in tumor size over the course of, say, 26 weeks, right? 6 months. It could be, for example, if it's a pain medication, reduction in pain, 20% or more, or percent reduction over time. Are there metrics in evaluation and learning that commonly show up?
Yes. It's funny. I was just teaching an introduction to evaluation workshop for evaluators. So evaluators looking to grow their skills. And it was to government officials in Mongolia, of all places. And they asked the very same question. They asked, from the United States perspective on evaluation, do we have similar metrics that we use across the board? And is there some sort of like archive where you can go, and if you're looking for oncology, what would those metrics be that we should use? And unfortunately, it's not as clean as that. We don't have just like one repository where we can go, but evaluation is a very closely related sister to the field of research. And in that way, we lean on research so much. And when I first engaged, when my team first engaged with a new partner, the first month at minimum is learning about the field. So we're experts in evaluation. We are by no means experts in the topics that we are working with as evaluators or analysts. And so our job is to get that background information, to read research that's being done in the field, to read what peers are saying as they promote the impact that they're having, so that we are not only just smarter, but we can help our clients to be aligned with industry standard. What metrics are we seeing coming up in research a lot? What are the tools that people are using to measure their impact? And again, what are peers promoting as their successes? And we use all of that to kind of craft what the organization does, or what we do with that organization.
So if I'm hearing this, like, for example, let's just say in marketing, right? Like a way to measure impact, like let's just say with a shopping or marketing website, is how many clicks are on the website, how long they spend on their web, how many people convert and purchase a product, right? That's very, very clear. How would you, so it seems to me like in this evaluation is that you have to like learn the domain, define the metrics, then collect the data that help you define those metrics, and then report on them. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. You could come teach that next workshop that I just told people about. That is absolutely correct. So we begin with, and it's again the process of joining the organization where they're at. So when we start with them, one, we need to learn about the background. What data do they already have? What are they collecting? What does the industry look like? Then we get an understanding of how well they've basically thought through their program, thought through the intention from the activities through that outcome, and how grounded is in it research, how much evidence do they have that the work that they're doing will yield the impact that they're expecting. So if it's well thought out, we just ask for, it's called a logic model. That's one of the ways that you can really describe that. We ask for their data that shows, like the research that shows, or their own work that they've done that shows those connections. And then essentially we work to build on that. Like, how can we help you to further that evidence base of how you are moving from your theory of how this should work to proving that this works? And as you're saying, we need to make really concrete the theory behind the actions. Then we decide how we measure each stage of that process. Like, what are those really concrete metrics that we can capture? Then how are we going to capture those metrics and creating those data collection tools if they don't already exist? And then collecting the information and then analyzing it and so on. And so you can imagine an analyst's role, maybe not in the theory portion, but as soon as we move into here's the theory and we need to start assessing it, that's really when the analyst begins to step in.
Sorry for like not having my video and you speaking to a black box. Can you explain again what a logic model is?
Yes. And I wonder if I could pull one up. A logic model is, in essence, a description of a program. It's a program's model, in effect. And it always has some of these core components. And this is an international thing. They have, it might be called a log frame if you're working outside of the United States. It is called a log frame if you're working outside the United States. Just like everything else when it comes to language in the United States and then outside, we just do things a little differently. So it has things that, or it describes what the inputs are, like what's necessary in order for the program to operate, the activities. So what exactly does the program do? Those outputs, how are we measuring what the program is doing? The outcomes, so how are we assessing whether they're successful or not? What does success look like? And again, in numeric or information form. And then it may include impact. So a lot of times, if you might imagine any kind of program, impact has ripple effects, right? Like you have one impact and then that causes another one and it grows from there. So a lot of times the logic model will describe those layers of impact, and we often call it short-term impact, mid-term, and long-term. And then the last piece that I think is so essential and kind of gets ignored sometimes are the assumptions. So like what are we assuming is true about humans? Or what are we assuming is true about how this program in particular will be implemented? And if those things were not true, those assumptions were not valid, all of this would fall apart. And those things, being able to surface them and name them are really important. And I teach an evaluation class for NYU, and there was a particular example that students did. They were looking at New York City's like kind of like housing voucher program, Section 8. And I forget what I started the story and now I need to be able to finish it, but they were talking about the assumptions and how critical they were in being able to like be clear that these assumptions are necessary preconditions for a program's success. So for instance, one of the activities in Section 8 housing are regular inspections. And the inspections are to ensure that the conditions are livable. And they were raising the fact that these assumptions assume that the inspections are going to see everything that's happening, that they are going to be done regularly, that the issues are going to be raised properly. If any of those things don't actually happen, then the idea of Section 8 kind of collapses on itself. So that's what those assumptions are.
Okay, I think your workshop coming up on May 5th is reasonably priced, and I think you will probably see me there. I see my calendar is open that day, so I'll attend. I would say that what I'm particularly interested in is, for example, how do I show that data umbrella has impact? You know, how do we show that, for example, open source projects have impact? You know, it almost seems to me that it's a whole project just to like determine what impact is in, say, community in open source, and then to actually implement those metrics.
Yeah. The beauty of the work is that you get to decide what the impact is that you're shooting for. And you likely, because you've been doing this for so long, not only have an idea of where your North Star is, but you have talked to other people who do similar things. You've read about things that people have done that have been impactful or not impactful. And you've refined your approach as Data Umbrella over the years as a result. And so when we begin working with an organization that's been around for as long as Data Umbrella, it becomes easier because you do have this wealth of understanding about what you're trying to do and why you're doing what you're doing in order to get there. And that helps a lot in creating that logic model. It's much easier to do than it would be for a brand new program, for instance.
Okay. And so my last question as we're getting on the hour is, have you done evaluation for learning programs such as online courses and things like that? And do you have like any overarching shares from that?
Yeah, that's actually my bread and butter. So I am in a PhD program studying adult education right now. And that is my favorite because I do so much training. And so my desire has always been to understand to a deep level what is the most impactful way of engaging. And for me, my niche is data literacy education. So how do we do data literacy education the best? And spoiler alert, one of the best ways is using data that people are familiar with. So we always use open data. And I actually have a paper that I wrote, a lit review on best practices with data literacy education, if it's of interest to you. I'm happy to share it.
Yes, that would be great. I was going to say for your upcoming May 5th, it's a immersive learning experience. Do you know like what area that you'll be using the example from?
It's open. So if you want it to be something in particular, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'm
Available.
particularly looking at online learning, like evaluation, like frameworks and things like that. So I'd be very, very curious for that.
Yeah, we can do that. I can pull from a recent evaluation, actually the L'Oreal one, um, pull some materials from that and use that as our case study.
Okay, great. We have no other questions, and I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to present to the Data Umbrella community.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope I see you all on May 5th, or just reach out if you're curious about anything, want to learn more. I'm happy to engage.
Thank you.